Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and a certified informational privacy professional, helping to provide practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies. And I'm joined by
Jody Daniels' sidekick, Justin Daniels here. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback, helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
This episode is brought to you by Clover Advisors. Oh, I forgot the drum roll. Here we go. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, SaaS, e-commerce, media agencies, and professional and financial services. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there is greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more, visit redcloveradvisors.com. And today, I'm so excited to welcome Andy Dale to the show. Andy is General Counsel and Chief Privacy Officer of Alyce, a super cool company that is redefining direct mail as the only personal gifting platform that provides a personal experience at scale. And Andy has an amazing range of experience with specialties in advertising, being a general counsel, and he's also a certified informational privacy professional. So Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're so excited that you're here. Justin, you going to kick us off?
I thought before we get started, what did you think of your RSA experience?
My RSA experience was a fantabulous experience, except Andy and I used to get together in person at the IAPP conference where there was, I lost count, however many, like 5,000, 10,000 of our closest friends. So I did kind of miss out on the 50,000 of my closest friends at RSA. That's like a lot of people.
Yes, and it was San Francisco, your happy place.
San Francisco is my happy place. But I do hope that we can get back to in-person. And Andy, we can have our in-person get together once again. Maybe
2022 is going to be a big year for events, big year for gifting. So people at Alyce my current company, are thinking a lot about what our products and services will look like in 2022 in particular because of that. People are going to miss that, I think, and crave it.
I think you're right.
Maybe privacy could be the gift of anonymity.
There's no such thing, Justin. There's no such thing as anonymization, you know?
Indeed.
According to the GDPR.
All right. Monday morning, no GDPR.
Unavoidable.
Yes, I know. So, Andy, why don't we start from the top? So, talk to us a little bit about how you got started and your evolution to where you are now.
Yeah, thanks. Like a lot of people, I sort of fell into privacy in through different, avenues in my work. I was in a law firm and didn't touch it really. And then when I went to TD Ameritrade, it was sort of crept in and I sat right next to the chief privacy officer's office. And so it came in as it does a lot of times in contract. And I started to understand, I guess this is pretty important. And he was the first person that I ever met that had a CIPP certification. He had it on his wall. I was like, what is this? And he was like, yeah, it's this thing, it's pretty new. It was, I think, he was certainly the first person I knew that had a certification. And at the time, the IAPP probably only had, 500 or 1,000 people in it. And so just kind of like through him, I understood kind of what the issues were and I saw him come up in contracts. And then I left the company and I went to, Jody, as you alluded to an ad tech company, and I moved to Boston. And as I was talking with him about it, he said, you're going to have a ton of privacy issues at that company. And I said, what do you mean? It's just cookies. And he laughed and he was like, you'll see. And, lo and behold, like the first day I got there, I sat down with our CEO and I was like, well, so other than the obvious things, I was the first lawyer at that company. And so other than the obvious things, what should I focus on, And he was like, just privacy is going to be a huge thing. And this was like 2013 around that time frame. So, or end of 2013, early 2014. And so, and obviously he was right. It became really important. I got my certifications and started really being able to help the ad tech company. And then from there, a couple other companies, but always going to companies that have data and personal data as a critical element. Cause I don't like to choose stuff that's simple or easy.
That makes sense. It's actually about kind of the similar story. I was doing ad tech and then there was this privacy issue and who was going to help solve privacy. And that's how I got into it. It was actually 2011 when the IB came out with their little ad choices. I clearly remember the article. It was this 2-paragraph article around ad choices. And that led me down this very deep rabbit hole of researching privacy, ad choices, IAB, and entered the industry at the same time.
I went to a conference, Jody, in DC. It was the Association of National Advertisers, Ad Law and Policy. Because my main client, one of my main clients at TD Ameritrade, internal client, was our advertising and marketing team. And so I said to that chief privacy officer, like, maybe I should go to this event. And I went and I came back and I was like, there's this icon thing that people are putting on ads now. I think this is something we should do. And of course, what do you think happened? He was like, yes. And you should be the one that does that figures it out for us.
Yep. That's how it works.
Yeah.
How it works.
So kind of bringing it forward to the present day, can you talk a little bit about what are the biggest privacy issues you deal with on a day-to-day basis as the GC?
I mean, right now, Justin, as a company, the stage we're in, it's international. It's me trying to make sure that as we go global, we're doing that, with privacy in mind. Before I joined, one of the first things I did, the way I met, the founder and CEO and the head of product at the time, was to start, just brainstorming and whiteboarding and talking about international for them. They had a lot of questions about how to do that. And we spent the first 9 months of my time at Alyce, not going global, but making sure we had sort of the baseline privacy infrastructure to go into Europe. And so we spent a lot of time working on that. And we were also, setting ourselves up to raise money. So then we raised money a couple months ago. We closed a financing round. And now, a lot of our customers are pushing, and we've just released general availability for the UK, and Europe will follow. The rest of Europe will follow in a couple weeks. And, we have other countries on our roadmap. And so that's what's consuming me now, is making sure we can do that, in a way that feels, fast enough for a tech company life, but also responsible, with the table stakes in place.
Have you found when you're dealing with privacy in Europe that there's a real difference when you deal with it in France or the UK versus Germany, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back more to my time at DataZoo when we had a wholly owned subsidiary in Germany. The way DataZoo entered Europe was buying a company in Germany. And that was both culturally, cultural differences between the US company and the German subsidiary. So, and then understanding, we always hear, well, so in Europe, privacy is viewed as a fundamental right, whereas in the United States, it's sort of viewed differently. That was very clear and evident. And I think you have to experience that before you really can get what that's like. You can think about that or see it on paper, but it really is different. And then it varies, as you noted, Justin, by country. So our German colleagues had a very different viewpoint than we had a small team in France, and they had a very different viewpoint. It was, generally the same, but we were also at a time when the landscape was evolving. It was pre-GDPR, moving into and past the GDPR. So while you had the directive prior to the GDPR, you had all these different, countries with different laws implementing their own sort of viewpoint. And then the GDPR was supposed to harmonize that, but it didn't really still, because there's still cultural differences. And this is what we're struggling with, in terms of, how fast we can launch in Europe with Alyce as a product. Because if we launch a gifting marketplace in the UK, there are going to be different privacy and cultural norms from a consumer in France versus someone in London or, another part of England. So we have to think through like what's the actual privacy difference and what's the cultural difference as well.
I'd love if you can share a little bit more about that. So as you're developing the product, there's a product life cycle, right? There's the beginning. We were thinking about it. There are a variety of different considerations. How much is it going to cost? People, legal, all kinds of things. And obviously privacy. So help us understand a little bit, how do you incorporate privacy in the product development life cycle, whether it be a new one or sort of an existing thing and someone wants to expand on it? What does that look like?
Bunch of different sort of vectors there to that question, but I think it all starts with the culture you create when you join the company, and it helps being the general counsel as well as CPO to be able to do that. The CPO can do that too, but you kind of need your privacy champions within the organization, and they can even be consultants. Like if you're working with Red Clover or another consultant, they need to be your champions as well internally. Your outside counsel can do that too, if you have them interacting with other members of the team. So I think setting a culture that we care deeply about data privacy and that it's a relevant piece of the privacy by design cycle that we're trying to run is important. So that means everything from talking about it a lot, having privacy 101 kind of, in this day and age, rather Zoom calls where I walk through things and answer questions and give people a lay of the land, and spend a lot of time with our product team just talking to them about privacy so that they can understand that my role when I'm wearing my product counsel hat, that role is a true mix of privacy and sort of go to market legal work. So you set the cultural foundation, and then it comes down to a little bit more like, as you narrow, more actual practical things that are happening. Like, what are the privacy checkpoints in the requirements that are written up by product managers, and where are they and what are they? And, at what point are we reviewing things? And then when are we doing an impact assessment? And when are we doing that along this sort of spectrum of product development? And so a lot of that is develop your champions and then have open conversations with them about what process are you creating for product development and where does privacy fit in? And I don't like to be a person that says yes or no or having like a veto unless it's an insane proposition. I like it to be more like checkpoints along the road, so that we're up to speed on what's happening, so that we can say from the very beginning, well, you want to use data this way and not this way.
I think that makes sense, especially that you're having that conversation throughout the experience. So for anyone listening who is trying to figure out how to incorporate privacy throughout whatever new products or new services or new ways to use data, that's a really helpful point. It doesn't always have to be sort of at the very beginning and only at the end, but really to be part of that conversation throughout. Sounds like been very successful that you've seen in multiple organizations.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like planting seeds in a garden, like telling people over time, these are the things that are important. Like what's a controller? What's a processor? This is what CCPA means for the United States. There's a looming federal privacy law. Maybe not. Giving someone some like context around what's happening in the world, and then doing that as well with not just your product people, but also the engineers, and let them know there's different ways to talk to different, segments of the business. And so making sure that if you're thoughtful, you can highlight the things about privacy that are important to those people. Like, for example, with an engineer, I'll say things like, I'll give them the background and I'll start talking about things. And I'll say, by the way, this is like knowing at least some stuff about privacy is huge for your personal resume and your development as an engineer. Like it's only getting more prevalent. This isn't going to be any less prevalent. It's good, like cyber, privacy, any of it, anything you can learn about security and privacy, it makes you well more marketable, and it's just a feather in your cap, for future jobs. And they like hearing that, unsurprisingly.
Andy, I'm going to begin my question next with the R word.
R word?
The R word. So typically when I've been involved with certain companies and they have a ransomware event, one of the things it does is it lays bare every mistake you've made with your privacy program, like companies who can't tell me where their data is because they never did a data inventory. And so given business you're involved in now is heavy in the marketing space, why do you think that companies struggle so much to make privacy a part of their culture, especially when if you have a security incident with ransomware, any problem with your privacy program is laid bare completely to everyone in the company and your customers?
I mean, honestly, it goes beyond ransomware. Any security incident really, opens up vectors you weren't aware of and weren't thinking about. And I think one reason, Justin, is that we have so many new laws at the moment that constantly companies are retrofitting. Like, so you're retrofitting, data subject request scripts and technologies against, systems that weren't built for that not because it was wrong. It just was built during a different time. If you look at, PCI, compliance and systems that were built prior to that standard, like, of course, you have to go back and retrofit things. So they built things the way they knew how. There was basically no regulation of that prior, and then you have to build forward. I think now we're getting to a little bit of a better place where people are, potentially thinking about these things earlier on. But I don't think we're at the point yet. And I'd love to hear from y'all on this if y'all think this too. Like, I don't think we're at the point yet where CEOs and founders of tech companies are like, from the very beginning, unless it's a privacy tech company, from the very beginning, baking that in from Jump Street. I don't think it's happening yet. So you're always doing some amount of retrofitting. And I think, Justin, especially in security, I think people are still just always viewing, unless it's like a heightened concept from the get-go, like we're storing a bunch of really sensitive information from the get-go. A lot of people are like, build, code. Data, privacy, security, like months or years later down the road. Oh, I need a CISO. I don't have the money for that. So third-party consultant, get me where I need to go up to a point to get through diligence and raise money. Okay, keep going. Maybe I'll hire a security engineer. Keep going. And just maybe I'll have an incident or maybe I won't. And they are waiting.
It sounds like a very familiar story, Andy. How you just described that is what I feel like, Justin, you're saying all day long.
Until some of the investors have their portfolio companies have a ransomware event, and then magically they are reborn into how they view security. And candidly, we've had investors tell us, hey, when I'm making an early stage investment of, privacy and security fall on well outside the top 10 of the most important issues that they face. And then to your point, they don't build it into the DNA of the product. And then later when they try to, as you say, retrofit it, it's typically not done well. And then if they suffer a ransomware event, they get it, or they go into due diligence on an M&A deal. But I have to tell you, even in the M&A deals, I'm still very surprised by how many companies don't do the level of diligence on cyber and privacy that they should.
I think, well, so not to go too into the weeds on M&A, but one thing that's impacted that is rep and warranty insurance. So now you're getting backstopped for these reps and warranties that you're making by an insurance policy, and it's causing, in my view, the buy side of an M&A deal to make stronger reps, to have stronger requirements for reps of the target, and then the target is sort of incentivized to just agree to it because they're backstopped with insurance, and it's viewed as a risk shifting game as opposed to well, my program does X, Y, Z, so I'll rep to X, Y, Z, and then I'll go sell the company. It's a different game now. And so I think we've moved the ball away from things that Justin, maybe in your calculus there, like, don't create better security practices or privacy practices to that end.
Well, I think that's interesting, Andy, because I guess what I'm starting to see is the insurance market, when it comes to ransomware, premiums are going to skyrocket. Coverage is going to go down. Even one insurer, AXA, has gotten out of the ransomware business. And my expectation is what's going on in the cyber insurance market will start to impact whether and how cybersecurity and privacy is insured under a reps and warranties insurance policy. Because my view as an attorney is cyber and privacy risk on an M&A deal is potentially purchase price and beyond risk for the buyer.
It can be, right? Really depending on the nature of the data that's involved.
Just ask Marriott.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting time.
So with that being said, what advice would you give to other general counsels, especially new ones coming into a role?
Boy, I mean, it's such a broad question. Lots of GCs, I think, have their own kind of 30, 60, 90 plan that they execute when they walk into a company. I mean, I think personally, my view is that I like to walk in and assess things and not blow anything up right away. Because I just think it's responsible, it's reasonable, it's rational. I've seen it go the other way, and I don't personally think that goes well. So like, listen, get to know people, try to understand the culture of the company. Those are a lot of, sort of less practical things. I think on the practical side of things, I sort of mentioned getting some privacy champions in the business, and that means getting deep pretty quickly with the product, like understanding as much as you can about what the tech actually does and how it works. Spending time with engineers, spending time in the platform, like using the platform and making sure that the tech works, or rather that you understand how it works. Because I find that when I'm going to negotiate a contract, or as we discussed, reps and warranties, or anything privacy related, when I'm product counseling or anything like that, the more I can know about the tech, I'm just a way better attorney for the business.
I find it so funny that you say that, Andy, because I'm on video number 4 of 27 for network architecture, because when it comes to security and even the privacy parts, understanding how someone has set up their network when you have to talk to IT, I don't know about you, but many times I find I am the one who is the interpreter between the IT speak and the C-suite speak. And it really becomes almost, I think, table stakes that we as lawyers will have to really become fluent with how the security stack is set up, the technology stack, because I don't know how to understand a technology product in a contract if I can't visualize how the network and everything is set up.
So from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's dead on. Like my opinion is that the cyber lawyers that are the best are the ones that are very technical and are like picking through which databases you're using, how you're using them, what things are happening. They've spent a lot of time with CISOs. They are on point. And actually, I would say it's getting there as well for privacy. So on that same, some of the best lawyers in privacy that I have interacted with have technology backgrounds or have just dedicated an inordinate amount of time to learning technology. Some examples: Julia Schulman, the General Counsel and Chief Privacy Officer of TripleLift, is maybe the most technologically savvy ad tech lawyer I've ever come across. Jürgen Van Staden is the Associate General Counsel at Verizon. He understands ad tech deeper than maybe anyone at Verizon. So there's a real benefit in some of that, investing that time and energy in the tech.
Well, speaking of privacy, what is the biggest privacy challenge that you are facing right now?
I think there's 2. I mentioned going global. So in the gap assessment that's required to be done from multiple countries, that's just hard to do, whether you have a big team or a small team, and you're talking about Europe, you're talking about Asia. In Asia, every country has its own law or regime or doesn't. And so it creates a lot of variability there. So you got to have really good outside counsel to help you assess the gaps. that there may be and figure out how to close those gaps. So international is one. And then the other one is, I think, something everyone's facing, which is within the CCPA and the coming CPRA, the concept of a sale of data. To me, I've been relatively outspoken on this. I just think it's ludicrous. And so the definition of sale covers, walking down the street and talking about something. So it's just, to me, I don't know how. It's a challenge. It's a challenge I think about a lot. I think about everything we're doing in the context of product counsel and dealing with vendors and third parties, and how are you going to, use data? Really complicated.
So in the notion of kind of ad tech and sale, we also have not only what's happening in CCPA, CPRA, but we also have actual technology changes that companies like Apple and Google are putting forth. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of the world of cookieless marketing. And what does that mean for a company like Alyce?
It doesn't mean so much for Alyce. I mean, as having been in an ad tech company, it was a very different, it's a different landscape, moving away from cookies and towards some sort of hashed email based identifier or whatever solution is going to land. It's different for those companies where ad tech is table stakes. For an Alyce or my last company, SessionM, it's more about advertising for your business, and how you would utilize technology to advertise for your business. And I just think kind of the analysis is the same, which is no one knows. We're in a massive kind of gray area, and we've been in that place for a long time. And I think we're just going to keep living there for a while. So people are going to keep advertising. They're going to keep using data. They're going to keep sort of adjusting and augmenting their disclosures around their activities that they're doing. I'm an over disclosure type person. So my privacy policy is going to state exactly what we're doing with data. Might not be short or clear. It might not be fun to read, but that's my take on it. Is we have no enforcement history around this stuff. So like very little, so like people are going to keep acting, and I think we're just going to have to kind of see what happens.
So you mean your policy can't be concise and cover every obligation possible?
Well, one could take the view that the regulatory framework has created an impossibility of doing what you just described.
I know. They say it has to be simple and concise, and yet include all these things. That is so long. It's impossible to make it short and concise.
And by the way, the CCPA requires, I think you alluded to this, like sort of clarity and speaking, on a more basic human level, but yet like the buttons for do not sell that like were advanced as options were completely ridiculous and made no sense. And you didn't even know like which box was checked. And so, leave it to the tech companies to figure out their own UI and UX for this stuff, but it's not easy.
For sure. I actually would think it would put Alyce in an interesting position, because if you think about people really trying to connect and create relationships with people, what you all are doing is an extension of that. It's a way to really create a strong relationship and furthering the whole point of marketing, which is connecting with someone, building a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was solutions like Alyce did well last year when companies were still trying to and desired to engage with customers and meet them where they are and have relevant and relatable conversations with them. I think, the question about ad tech is a little different, where you're dealing with sort of this weird cookieless identifier environment, but with first party data where customers are opting into that communication through either a marketing channel or some other avenue where a company has gotten engagement with somebody and then is trying to engage deeper or further or have a deeper customer conversation, or do account-based marketing where you're trying to create conversations for larger kind of enterprise discussions. Yeah. I mean, like these kinds of solutions are going a long way, I think.
Yeah, I see a lot of companies moving to more first-party data and more direct engagements. And I think those that might have played in the ad tech space, they'll still do it some, but they're looking for other ways to connect. And so I think that puts companies like Alyce in a good position. Obviously different type of marketing, but kind of taking from one bucket and moving it over into a different bucket.
Yeah, if you look at traditional account-based marketing or sort of IP address focused, marketing, there's still obviously there's room on that spectrum or the funnel, if you will, from the top part of the funnel for advertising all the way down to kind of more one-to-one engagement where a company like Alyce is involved.
Sounds great.
So, Andy, what is your best personal cyber tip?
So my best tip would be if you're in a young company and you don't have the buy-in or financial wherewithal to have a dedicated security person, make the case early and often and hard for at least an outsourced third-party security person to help assess your entire platform, your program, help you do SOC 2 if that's what you're wanting to do, or some other audit, and push that early and don't stop pushing that.
Great advice. Now, when you're not acting and serving as a GC and reading the latest privacy news and chatting with your product friends, what do you like to do for fun?
At Alyce, we call it our 5 to 9. So instead of your 9 to 5, we're trying to focus on engagement, with somebody so that when we have a business call, we're not talking about the weather. We're talking about something, relevant and relatable. So my 5 to 9 is, I'm a dad, you can see behind me. So two young kids, focused a lot on that. In this time of COVID, been able to spend a lot of time with them, which is a silver lining of this. It's great. And then additionally, I'm a big tennis player. I've been playing tennis since I was 6. So I play multiple times a week. And one of the nice things has been being able to continue to do that. And then I guess the last thing would be a lot of cooking and baking and learning how to do stuff like that in the kitchen.
So what's been your favorite creation that you've learned over the last year?
I got really good at focaccia, that bread. So spent a lot of time working on that recipe. And then additionally, just kind of baking with my 7-year-old, just learning new stuff and things that she's interested in and, tackling recipes. And then my 5-year-old drew a 4-tier layer cake, all different colors for fun as a drawing, and just said, "Dad, can you make it?" And so that was a fun challenge. I never made a tiered cake before. So
How'd it go?
it was great. Like good effort.
Excellent. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to be able to connect with you, where's the best way to do that?
Yeah, get me on Twitter or LinkedIn. On Twitter, it's AndyGale23, and then LinkedIn, I'm very easily searchable.
Excellent. Well, thank you so very much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.